What's going on, people? Attempt number 2 to record this video. So I got the old van in the shop. It's 2008. It's currently for sale. I had quite a few people call me about it. Nobody's very serious because it has a very high mileage. So I got two of them. I got this one, 2008, and I got a 2010. So I might consider selling the 2010 because it has lower mileage. The point of the whole video is regarding a high high fuel pressure pump and low pressure pump. So the high pressure pump at the maximum, at the full rev, is 23,200 PSI. At the low fuel pressure pump, which is this one, component information, your pressure is supposed to be between 59 PSI plus 2. So 60, 62, 63, you should be okay. I would prefer to feed this pump with a higher pressure than actually recommended. Minimum, you don't want to go to minimum. You better go a couple pounds higher. So this pump is located, if you own one of these vehicles, I'm pretty sure you know, is this guy right here. Front of the engine, driver's side. When you're standing, it's on your right-hand side. Right here, that's discharge for the high pressure, feeds your rails on both sides. And before it gets there, it goes through the fuel filter, which is this, and then feeds it through this line. So it's not a very complicated system, but somewhat is. So this fuel pump sits in your tank. That's what that one says, 59 plus minus 2. And feeds this pump, and then this pump feeds your injectors. So when I test on this vehicle, because it had a really long crank and start, obviously compression already plays the role in it. It's not as good as should be because it's 550,000 miles at this point in time, almost there. Obviously you make up some of it, then there's one glow plug is broken, so the colder it is, it's harder to start. But when I checked the fuel pressure at the fuel filter housing at the low side, it was like 42, 43 PSI. So I'm like, I probably need the pump. The one goes in the tank, but I already replaced it. I did replace it with a used one from last miles van. And I told myself, well, there's got to be a regulator someplace. Well, come to find out, this pump sits in your car, in your van, just like that. And this little guy, which is a check valve, I'll show you how it works. Pretty much when it reaches the pressure, it pushes on that little guy. So I never seen one like that, which is very common to use them now, especially German cars. I'm like, how do you adjust the pressure on it? There's nothing to turn. And there's a ball bearing. So I put in the vise, tapped on a little bit, and guess what? My fuel pressure, reinstalled it, moved that ball bearing because it tightens the spring, and then it's hard to push on this check valve. And it raised my fuel pressure exactly what I want to be, right at the 63 or 64 pounds. So I put everything back together, and I did solve the problem starting. It actually starts starting much better because you turn the key on, gotta wait for your glow plug. The fuel pressure gets a lot faster to this pump, and this pump already picks it up 60 pounds and 64 pounds. And then I think at the idle, it's supposed to be right around 4,500 PSI for the van to just idle, which is insane pressure. So then I end up going for a ride, which is my initial problem. If I go down the road and I step on it very hard, it will pull like really, really good for a little bit, and then it will derate, and then a code, I don't remember exactly the number of it, it will come up as a maxed out rail pressure. And I'm thinking to myself, I already replaced injectors, like how we maxed out the rail pressure. And I have the scanner plugged in. You know, it's kind of when you're driving, it's hard to see that the numbers, you got to pay attention to the road. And then I saw that information, which has got to be a 23,000 PSI, and it would not go there. And then all of a sudden it will jump up over that number, and then it will derate. So I'm like, well, I have to have a bad sensor in the back of this rail, which is passenger side, and it's locating, basically if you go behind, it's in the back there. It's kind of hard to see now when it's installed, but there's easy to access to it if you take this oil, whatever you want to call it. So I replaced that part. That didn't fix the problem. So prior to this injectors, I bought the injectors and rails with all the sensor and all the BS. So I replaced them, and it ran a little bit better, but we still had that problem. Well, come to find out, the injector was better, but this fuel pressure regulator for the rail pressure regulator, it was bad the once I bought it. So I ended up putting my original one in when I replaced these injectors, and while I solved the problem. Vehicle is still not starting like is my other one, like fast. There has to be quite a few cranks, and once again, obviously it's colder than this, it has to take it. But the fuel system is very finicky. It has a couple sensors, so they're reading information. This one, I don't know exactly what this sensor does, or this regulator, but it does something, and I believe it's for the high pressure pump. It's feeding. That's a fuel temperature sensor because it has to make up for it. But I think this one is actually regulates, either takes the rate information or something. I can look it up on it. But this, the most important thing, because anything metal and it constantly goes back and forth, it will eventually kind of lose its strength like a spring. And instead of sending a fuel pump to get rebuilt, you actually can fix it yourself. But for that, you have to have a gauge, fuel pressure gauge, to check where your pressure is. And it's, once again, am I repeating myself? It is very important how much pressure you're feeding to this pump. You can feed probably 20 pounds and it will start. It will take a while, but it will start. But under a full load, that high pressure pump will try to max out, which is 23,200 PSI. Sometimes it's even higher. But if you starting that pump with the fuel, you can rule in that pump. Cummins 5.9 known for that problem because the lift pump will go bad and the people keep running them without seeing what's incoming pressures. It has to be 5 pounds or greater, and then it will rule in your VP44 pump. So this is basically the same thing, just the pressures are a lot higher. So if you have one of these older vans, my recommendations, if you want to get more life out of it and do prevent maintenance, you work on it, I would check fuel going to your high pressure pump. So at this point in time, kind of jumping out of subject of fuel pressure. So I got a 10, like I said before, in 2008. For some reason, the 2008, it is not deleted. There's nothing done. It's bone stock. The DPF is everything's there. It gets, for some reason, a lot better fuel mileage than my newer one. And this one, it's actually a lot cheaper to operate, obviously the fuel. And then another thing, you don't have to put urea on it. So a lot of people says, well, my DPF's plugged up or EGR or something like that. Yes, it could eventually, if everything's not running right, like you're not, streaming injectors or whatever, then you plug up. If everything runs right on these vehicles and you take them for the long ride and you do proper maintenance, and it's most important thing, which I did a ton of research and I actually spoke with a guy who works on them all the time. That is most important thing. I don't know how many times I can repeat myself. Do not use Rutella of any Mercedes diesels. That is big killer for them. There's something missing, some sort of additive missing. Make damn sure you're using Mobil 1 ESP with that formula in the back. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got to be 22951 or 22931. For some reason, it has to be Mobil 1. This oil actually was designed just for these engines. They will plug up the DPF, and the van what I bought sitting outside where I'm currently driving, it had a spun bearing. The bearing was so melted to it, and I trying to do research, what is it doing? And there's a guy who actually just works on the Sprinter van and diesels. He says, we seen him, a handful of them, the people using Rutella, and they will spun a bearing. Like, that doesn't make no sense. Oil's oil, but it's got to be missing some sort of additive into it. And if you're running them really hard, or you're pulling with them, or you're loading them inside, whatever you're doing, apparently something's missing out of oil. So make damn sure you're using a Mobil 1. And trust me, I had a van, old FedEx van, I believe it had original engine in it, and it had over 800,000 miles, and that thing ran so damn good. And I bought it, kind of fixed it out. One guy was bugging me to sell it, and I says, dude, man, it has a very high mileage. I'm like, you sure? He's like, tell me how much, I will buy it. So I actually sold it. Obviously, I did some work to it, but not specifically for anything on the engine. I put a transmission in it, but the guy's still driving it. It's about to hit 900,000 miles. And I talk to him once in a while. He says, there's no issues at all. Never check engine light come up, nothing. Everything's run perfect. So I am a strong believer that is a 1,000,000-mile engine with no problem. Obviously, I eventually will start losing compression. It will be hard to start it, losing power, but they will run forever. So thanks for watching all.